This is a short video to illustrate what the drop center is if you're not familiar with it, because I had to learn this when I started doing manual tire changes, and also why it's important that you start at a certain spot on the rim. So on the rim, there's the portion of the rim that the bead sits on, and then below that, this is called the drop center, where the rim actually goes in considerably, maybe 1.25 inches or so. And this is where you always need the opposite side of the tire to sit. So if you're removing the tire, the side that you're not working on, that you're not removing, has to sit down in this drop center to give enough clearance for the other side to come off. And when you're mounting the tire, then you want to start forcing it into the drop center to give enough clearance to get the other side on. So again, this is just a section of a tire that I am throwing out just to illustrate. So that's the proper placement of the top bead of the tire when you're going to remove this tire. And if it's sitting up there on the bead on this side, then you won't have enough clearance on the other side to remove the tire, and you'll be stuck all day. So the important thing is always to get the far side of the tire, side of the tire you're not working on, into the drop center to give you enough clearance. So this is just another view to illustrate the purpose of the drop center and how important it is to remove or mount tires. This is just the section of tire I'm disposing of, but if I'm going to remove this tire, this side's down in the drop center. You can see as I lift up, I can almost pull it off by hand even. You see there's plenty of clearance and a big gap there. However, if this side of the tire rides up on that bead seat, then if I try to pull off this side by hand, I can barely get it to even sit up on the bead seat, and there's just going to be no way I'm going to pull that off. So it's important that the far side is down in the drop center, and that'll give you the clearance to get the tire off. So when you're taking the tire off, the far side has to be down in that drop center, and then you start taking off from the opposite side. Or when you're mounting, it's important to get the tire down into the drop center and be sure that the side you start on stays down in the drop center while you're working your way around. Otherwise, if it sits on the bead seat, you'll never get the tire on. So now the TPMS sensor, if your wheel has this style of TPMS sensor that sits by the valve stem, can impede the tire from falling into the drop center. For example, if you've got the tire here, and this is a spot where you need the tire to fall into the drop center, then as it comes down, obviously the presence of the TPMS sensor there is going to prevent the tire from slipping into the drop center. So it's very important that anywhere where you need the tire to fall into the drop center, it's not where the TPMS sensor is, so that it's able to fall into the center. And also, of course, that prevents damage to the TPMS sensor. And so now I'll show you with the real tire where you can start to prevent that problem. So here I've got a tire half mounted on the rim, and I'm about to mount the second bead. And of course, you've seen before the clamp to keep the tire down in the drop center. But it turns out it's really important where you place this clamp, because at the TPMS sensor, the tire is not going to be able to go down into the drop center. So if I place the clamp back here, again, this is the wrong spot. What's going to happen is as the tire, we're trying to force it into the drop center over here, and as it goes down, it will be prevented from falling to the drop center, and we're not going to have enough clearance to get the tire off. So as I spin this around, you can see it gets super tight, and I don't have the strength to move that around. And looking in, you can see the tire is resting right on the TPMS sensor. So in addition to possibly damaging the TPMS sensor, it also is preventing the tire from getting enough clearance to be able to mount properly. So now if instead I put the clamp over past the TPMS sensor, here, once it starts forcing the tire into the drop center, it's clear to go fully into the drop center. And there it goes on, as simple as can be. So again, when you're going to mount the second bead of the tire on the rim with TPMS sensors, make sure that you put the clamp to force the tire into the drop center on the far side of the TPMS sensor, somewhere over on this edge, not on this edge, past the TPMS sensor. So then the tire is free to drop right into the drop center, and it'll make it a lot easier to mount the tire.